Start first by saying thank you for to ARTSPLACE for asking me to be here, and to Natasha and the family and Clara. I haven't met you yet, but I just want to say hi. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet you in person. So the first thing I want to say is I'm not an expert on Harold Cromwell in any way, shape, or form. There are experts on Harold Cromwell's work in this room, but if I'm an expert in anything, I'm an expert in the context of how artists from Nova Scotia fit into these the larger stories of Canadian and international art. And over my career, I have worked a lot with folk art, particularly with Nova Scotia folk art, and of course Harold Cromwell is a major part of that story. The reality is, though, is that his part of that story hasn't been told well enough, and I'm so thrilled to see this exhibition downstairs. That's the most work of your father's work I've ever seen, and it's really impressive. I'm willing to bet, with the exception of his family, it's the most work of his in one place that anybody has ever seen. And I hope it's the first of many exhibitions that bring his work to light. Nova Scotia has a really quite an interesting history with folk art. It's kind of unique in that folk art is something that actually takes place all over the world. Wherever there is something called fine art, you'll find people making something called folk art. It tends to be thought of as being, some words that are used to describe it are outsider art or naive art or, and then folk art. But, I never liked the term naive because artists who make work, especially who make work for their entire lives, there's nothing naive about the work. There's nothing naive about the work on display downstairs. It's funny. It's got a kind of cutting sense of humor about the social circumstances that the artist worked in. This was somebody who was looking at their community, telling stories about it, and doing it in a way that was very, very direct and very honest. There's nothing naive about that. But what happened here in this province, which is perhaps unique to folk art in most parts of North America anyway, is that it became very early drawn into the gallery system, into the fine art system. Before the 1970s, folk art was people making things, selling them by the side of the road, making things mostly for themselves, for their friends, for their family, to make their everyday life more interesting, more beautiful, more pleasant. Because especially in rural parts of rural anywhere really, before the 60s and earlier, you didn't have home decor shops, you didn't have places to go and reproduce things that you were seeing in public magazines and in pictures and books about how the other side lived, as it were. People made their own decor. They painted their own wallpaper. They made their own decorative objects to make the house look better. That was just natural. It was a thing. People who worked with their hands would make things all the time. They would make anything they needed. And folk art became part of the antique market. Actually, that's how it was really, really known. You went to antique stores to buy folk art for most of it, and in most places you still do. Here in Nova Scotia, with Maud Lewis and the attention she started getting, you ended up getting this sense that somehow there was something going on, and rather than making work just for their own entertainment, Nova Scotian folk artists were finding they could make it for an audience who wanted to buy it, and then they were making it for galleries, and they were making it for curators, and they were making it for a market that got bigger and bigger. But also what happened is that once you get into that kind of market system, there's expectations about what the work will look like and what people want. So Maud Lewis was the uber folk artist, and everybody wanted things that looked like that. They wanted bright, happy, they wanted very simplistic imagery. If you think of the painting, so Maud Lewis was followed by Joe Norris. And then in the sculptures you had Collins Eisenhower, and then and Ralph Baudelaire was making work that was very similar, and Sidney Howard and Kate Breton was making work that was very similar, and there was a sameness to the work in a way. And then I'm not running it down. I mean, I think this work is excellent, but there was a kind of style that was recognizable. Harold Cromwell didn't fit into that style. The work is, in fact, in many ways, when I look at this work, it looks like the work that I would see on the walls of the late lamented Museum of American Folk Art in New York City. It looks like work that is, the kind of work that was sort of seen as more outsider, but more just, not making work for tourists, not making work to tell a nostalgic story, but work that, while it's nostalgic, is telling real stories, is telling stories about his life and his experiences, the stories he knew that he repeated. And they're simple stories, right? I mean, like when you look at the works downstairs, they're not stories about some great event in the history of Weymouth. They're about finding an old songbook so that you don't have to sleep outside at night. It's simple stuff, the kind of stuff you talk about when you're telling stories of the hunting trip you were on, or your grandfather was on, or your uncle was on, or someone was on, and these stories keep going around. And so I think that's really the strength of this work, is it's so, the narratives are so interesting. You see the way that he wanted to remember how life was without making it romantic. It was just this is the way it was in the old days. This is what we did. So I think that it's something that sets him aside. It sets him into maybe a different category in the sense of, and Claire and Natasha, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Harold Cromwell ever once sat down and said, I'm going to be a Nova Scotia folk artist. He was making work as an artist. He was making work. If he, as a young man, had gone to art school, he left Weymouth and gone up to Halifax, that had been possible, went to the Nova Scotia College of Art, who knows what he would have done, right? But he could have gone in and learned these techniques that, I look at those works and I see the composition is strong, the perspective he knows how to work. He's doing these things that he's looking at how paintings and how fine art is constructed, and he's learning from it and adapting it to his own means. So, it's in some ways I would think, Harold, he falls into the folk art category because of the fact that he didn't go to a Halifax art school. He didn't learn all these traditional techniques. But let's be honest, these art schools didn't exist 200 years ago, and for most of the history of art, nobody went to those schools. So he falls into the category as an artist too, and that's something I think we have to we've gotten beyond. And folk artists now more in the art world that I'm in, the curators and museums, and folk art's kind of it's one genre among many, and they're not hierarchical. They're not. Maud Lewis isn't a lesser artist than Alex Coble. Maud Lewis is a different artist. Harold Cromwell is a different artist than those artists. But you actually can have a conversation about the history of art in Nova Scotia and in Atlantic Canada, and bring in names like Maud Lewis and Harold Cromwell into conversations that also include Alex Colville and Mary Pratt. Mm-hmm. I've done it many times. So I think that's, there's this kind, and so that's also for me why it's so exciting to see this work getting out into the public and having people actually see it. And I'm looking forward to the day when a show like this is touring around the country, and I think it's quite possible to happen. I mean, the strength is there, the story is there. That is the other thing about folk art that we all love, is the stories of the artists. It's less. People are less worried about the biography of someone like Wayne Boucher. Your personal life, your biography is it's not in your paintings the same way that Maud Lewis's is, and people want to know that story. So there is that advantage too with Harold Cromwell. It's a great story.
And I hope we're going to hear a bunch of sides of that story a little, here today. But it's this is the beginning, I think, of a new level of attention to the work of an artist who really deserves it. I'm really excited to see the work. I'm really thankful to be involved in a small way in this project, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I'm just curious, how many people here remember, personal interactions with Harold Cromwell? See, look at this. Okay. And how many people actually have a Harold Cromwell artwork? Wow, look at this. Okay, good. So I think we should just open up the conversation. Tell us about what you acquired and what the interaction was with Harold, and anything that you want to say about that experience. It would be great. I know that the artists that we're bringing in next week would really appreciate any stories you have about family and community and memory that you've got. So you can dig in first. I mean, I do remember seeing Harold in the market square back in the 80s. I remember where his stall was. I remember him sitting there drawing. And we had young children that we would take to the market, and there he was in the corner there, always in the same stall at Market Square. And I love the drawings downstairs of Market Square because you can see where he actually was, and the square has not changed that much, since that drawing was done. So, that's.
I'm going to point out some people.
Yeah.
You're one of them. Come on up.
Yeah.
You're one of them.
Yeah.
Come on up. You're one of them. Come on up. Yes, you don't look like you're one of them. We're just well, let's start with these three, and then you come up next. Okay. Is there anybody else? Let's go.
Thanks, Clara.
You shut on.
Start on one of the.
Ladies first.
So I used to go to the market a lot as a vendor, selling bread, for probably over 20 years. So I do remember Harold, like you, sitting, and I always look and at the Christmas market, and then and here this was my purchase. And it's I must say at that time, I can't say I had a lot of extra money, let's put it that way. So this was my very first piece of art I could purchase, because I just fell in love with all the colors, something spoke to me, and I just went and I said, I want to buy this, and it's been hanging on my wall ever since, and I love it. Showed it. I wanted to bring to show it off. I love the pink in it, and just the the black and the bright colors.
Was it framed?
This is the original Harold Cromwell art.
You talk about the rope.
So yeah, and it says, I think you had Bob's hunting camp, or can you? Who has a good eye?
It was Bob's hunting camp back in the old days.
We don't know who Bob is, but
No clue. Okay, the one in the middle.
Well, I don't have anything to show, but I got memories.
You got a story.
I have stories. I have more than one, so I'll just maybe briefly recount a couple. The first one was that I'm sort of a would-be artist myself, but I've never come close to coming up with anything like that man had. But I remember seeing him in the market in town here, and I was going by, and you know, he was always open to telling stories and integrating what he was drawing with a story, and even tying in people that were around the market into the story. Oh, come on over here, remember this? And oh yeah, and it's just amazing to have that sort of tie-in. And there was one time I was really quite taken. He had a very large drawing of blueberry pickers along a train, which I assume was down in Weymouth Falls or something like that. Anyway, and it was just beautiful. I mean, I just jaw-dropping to look at this thing. And I said, "Is that for sale?" "No, I'm sorry, it's spoken for. But I could do you one." So I said, "Okay." He said, when can I get it?" "Next week," he said. So I came back, and it was completely different, but it still had the train. Completely different composition. It wasn't quite as big. It was a more modest little thing, which was probably good. And I was just, I was just blown away that he could do it that quickly. And anyway, then, as my kids got older, we'd take them down to the market, and they were just fascinated by his stories and him involving all the people in the market area to these stories. And there was, I'm not going to go into the details, some of them were a little unsettling for the kids, and I said, "Don't listen to this." But they were beautiful stories nevertheless, right? And but he entertained the kids. He was like, to a certain extent, it was bringing out the kid in himself and the way he liked to relate stories of his past to today. And there was a link that he was drawing my kids into, and it was to the point that they had to have Harold Cromwell's. And here, I'm going to say this right now, I sent them, they've moved away, sadly, but I sent them the email that had the announcement there of this particular exhibit, and they immediately said, "Well, try and get us a poster, Dad." So I've been sort of lobbying subtly, to various people in the family and of the organization here at the gallery, and it may happen. It may happen, but anyway, and I still have we've got some. My wife and I have some, and we're going to try and share those. And it's too bad that I wasn't astute enough to take a couple off the wall and bring them along, because he really had just a knack with storytelling. And I know a lot of it's his history, but it's basically our history, right? And it's really heartwarming to see. Anyway, great to have everyone here.
Thank you.
How am I going to follow that?
Mr. O'Brien brought these pieces.
I wasn't stupid enough to take a couple. One of these dates this one on the wood panel is dated 1992. I'll walk around with that. These are the same way I received them from Harold when he did them, his original frames and so on. My name is Dan O'Brien. I used to take I looked after my mom for a long time. I lived in Bellagio. And I looked after my mother and used to take her a lot of the craft shows. And we'd always see Harold at the market with his work. We'd see him down at the theme park, at the Christmas craft shows and so on. And my mother always loved his work, and I was always interested in it. I loved the big train pictures that he did. Couldn't afford them. I loved them, and This one, my niece and my sister purchased for me as a kid. And the other one was a gift, but I can't remember who it was from. But I used to see Harold quite often because I was doing a little bit of work with maple syrup and maple candy, and I used to also exhibit at some of the same venues that Harold went to. And we got to know him quite well, and it was really, really interesting and friendly man to talk to. I feel quite enriched of having done it. I have trouble holding on to these because I have arthritis and arthritis.
Go ahead, I'll just keep walking
I
around.
realize I'm in the middle of an audience, but I wanted to bring in the two that my late husband, Richard Rudnicki, purchased from Harold, and Richard was an artist. I was wondering what that was. Richard was an artist who had a show here 2 years ago, and if you remember, included in that show were his sketchbooks. And Richard and Harold, I think, had a sort of affinity for this kind of work where you're imagining life and picturing it, and just seeing the importance and the beauty in the everyday. So I wanted to bring these to show, and maybe I can pass this one around. And just walk around with this one. This one is, there's 5 deers in this picture, but I can only find 4. Yes. That was invisible.
There is a drawing downstairs that says there's 4 deer.
Yeah.
Can you find that? And I would challenge anyone to try and find it. There's one hidden behind a tree that's reflected in the water.
That's
The same one? Yes.
Spoiler.
It's like, where's Waldo?
And it is the original frame.
Yes. Which is the tag, Stacy?
It says,
Alex Colville made his
Harold
frames.
Cromwell,
He also made his
5
own
years.
frames. First things, right up until the 80s, the first things most that people did was bought his paintings. Was having reframed in fancy gold frames.
Yeah.
And so, which everyone, in the gallery world, is just like handmade frames by the artist, right? So it's really great to see these handmade frames.
We did the good ones and reflections.
Don't get the reframe if you have them.
I'd just like to say a couple words. I really enjoyed Harold. I've been at the market for 30 years. He always was there. The paintings were extra. It was just a joy to sit and listen to him talk. He would tell stories about all those things that he'd done. And I would always try to encourage him to do a painting of that. Or a drawing. I have a drawing of, he told me a story. I assume they're all true, but I don't. He told me about getting out of the war, and they were training him to be a to work in a shoe shop. So I have a drawing of him working in the shoe shop. And my wife is the artist in my family, and she was if you all know St. Anita, most of you do. And she was kind of the one to encourage art and us purchasing art. And we must have half a dozen or better of his paintings. The ones in color are really remarkable. One of them has a birch bark frame, which the bark has fallen off. I can't change it. It's just how it is. So one time I went to the market and they encouraged me to shear a sheep for a demonstration. So a couple of weeks later, the Harold got me to come over and he had a picture of me shearing the sheep. It's not at the market, but it was, well, that's what he told me it was anyway. So I have really good fond memories. It's a shame that we don't appreciate people more when they're alive. I hope that he's up there watching down on us and taking advantage. Thank you for the opportunity.
I snuck in because I had this at my house since I retired. Harold used to come to school when I was a teacher in Richtown for 35 years. He used to come, Darlene Karamana's, the resource teacher, used to set up enrichment. And he used to come do artwork with the kids and like show them how to do pen and ink. So when they were closing, it makes me emotional, when they were closing Richtown Elementary, which was it's okay. This was on the shelf. And no one really understood because none of the teachers there were there when he was there, so I got this done. Anyway, what I loved about him at the market was that he was always doing paintings he always painted on, like, or did all his drawings or paintings on, like, anything. It could be a paper plate, or it could be a piece of birch bark, or it could be a birdhouse. So I will treasure this that I wanted to share. So I don't know if people want to have a look at it. It's really simple drawing, but you did for everybody to have a look at. Thanks.
When we were installing the show downstairs on Wednesday, there were two visitors who came in. They were just tourists in town from the UK, and they came through. And Randy was with me, and they were just mesmerized by the work. They spent over an hour looking at it, and the one piece that they spent a lot of time in front of is the one that's titled "Lest We Forget." It's all these little vignettes of his memories of World War II experience. And what they recognize most, being from the UK, because all these scenes were in the UK, right? These were soldiers, because he was serving in the UK. And they noticed right away that there was diversity in the way that soldiers were represented. There were black soldiers and white soldiers in that image, and they noticed that right away. And they acclaimed that. It was really quite moving to see them enjoy the work so much. Does anybody else have some great stories to tell? Maybe the family.
I got a couple of comment type things, more than a story. I did enjoy seeing Harold at the market, and I have my brother Danny that just left gave me one of Harold's that was at the blacksmith shop, because people know me as somebody that works with metal and does all kinds of things mechanical. And Harold had a lot of interest in a variety of things, and today we see people from all different walks of life relating to those simpler tasks that we have in our memory from the past. But it also makes me realize just how many more people in our communities there are like Harold, and cataloging the work that he has created would be a huge task. But it would be very rewarding to see, and it's a similar, I also have a really strong interest in Louis Jeremy, who was a local Mi'kmaq that made wonderful crafts, not to take away from today with Harold's Day, but there are so many more people along in the same parallel that maybe they don't fit in the large-scale art world, but they have a terrific amount of local perception to things that happen and a practical side to them too. People work with what they have. It's a quake that's going around.
Yeah.
That's a real, very genuine piece of work because it was with what was available. And I think it's amazing that we're here today, and it just shows how many people really appreciate all of the things that we take for granted because we're so blessed to live where we do.
Thank you. Can I ask the family to say something about?
All right.
Right, like, yeah, when did he start?
What does he want to know?
When did he start drawing? And
She's asking.
yeah, when did your father start drawing, and when did that start? What inspired him? Well, when did Harold start drawing? Like when did he start?
He started to, like, this is like all of you here, we've been told stories all of our lives. And the story goes that when he went to all of his brothers, except for the youngest, with the exception of, it's okay.
You're okay.
I'm okay. No, I'm okay. So all of his brothers went to war, with the exception of the youngest one. And they all came back. He had to come back early because he was injured, and he was in the UK at the time. He never went any further than that. He would have, and they were running maneuvers, learning how to do that type of thing. But apparently he had a night off. He and a fellow soldier friend went out to see a movie, I guess. That's where they were going, movie night. And I guess they were on the back of the truck. And I think during the blitz, they fell off the back of the truck. They fell out of it. And he was hurt. And it did something in his chest area. Some of his relatives thought that, his sisters and siblings said, well, he had tuberculosis. But before he died, we were home back in the 2000s, because that's not that might have been tuberculosis, they're still out there, whatever. But anyway, where I'm going with this, it was in the hospital, recuperating in the UK, where he first started to draw. Somebody told me, I don't know if it was somebody, well, anyway, there's a lot of different stories, but apparently he was given some paper and some pencils and stuff like that, and started to draw, and just sort of kept it up. And as far as, so it's been going on for that long. And of course, when he came back here, he was recuperating and had cancer. So that's good. Yeah, I am. Think I can start from where you left. Sure. Dad used to talk to me about when he was in the service. Like, he had TB, right? He caught TB when he was in the service, and he used to draw, if you see a paper plate down there, he used to take paper plates and draw to kill time. And the nurses would just go run by it all. Then when the war ended, he wanted to be a cartoonist. And he went to see about it, but they refused him. And I said, well, why did they refuse you? Was it your education? And he said, no, I think it was because of my color. And I said, okay, well, back then, opportunities were very slim. So as the years went on, Dad, like he always worked, he always provided, he was never unemployed. He was a gardener, he was a janitor, he was a commissioner, he'd done it all. It wasn't until, I mean, he did little bits and pieces on paper plates or whatever, but when he retired at 65, that's when he started drawing with a vengeance. And he used to have a desk, sit on a stool, have his light, and he's directed towards the TV, Price is Right. High volume, and he was sitting there and he I mean, and when we were growing up, he tried to teach me. And he said, I said, Dad, how do you get that tree looking like that? Well, look, this is how you do it. See. And I go, yeah, I know. No, like this. I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. But anyway, my brother there, he got a little bit of it. But it kind of went over you, didn't it? It went to Phillip.
I passed it on again.
And went to Phillip, it went to Karlon. But anyway, then he got his van and he started going different places. He went, to farmer's market, theme park when it was there. He even went to Shelburne.
Folk Art Festival.
Yeah. He went all over and he sold a lot of pictures. My mom tried to talk him into saying, you should hang on to some of that, whatever. But he liked art and he liked his money. So anyway, this is what I have to say. I'll finish it by saying, he said I remember him saying to my mom, and I was there, he says, one day I will really be noticed, but I won't be alive to see it. But Dad, I think you do see it. Thank you so very much for coming. And I'm gonna say again, I really appreciate you, Ted. My sister, she was behind she got this all together between you and her, Sophie and
Karlon.
who's the other one? And Karlon. Isn't he handsome? I just want to say one thing. Is she gone? The school teacher?
Yeah.
The reason why I got so emotional, sorry about that, but when he was a janitor, he was known as the funny janitor because he made all the kids laugh and so on and so forth. And we're talking about the stories for your kids, and that was just him. He was great at telling stories, but she had the little birdhouse she would draw on everybody. He used to draw pictures on the blackboards and all the classrooms in the classrooms. And especially at Christmas, I mean, the most beautiful Santa Claus that you've ever seen. So detailed on all, and every classroom had it, like grade 2, grade 1. But I think that kind of triggered me, so yeah. When she told the story. So anyway, that's all I have to say. But yes, he used to do that. He was a janitor.
He also worked at the hotel in Waynesville, right?
Little hotel,
Yeah.
when he was very young. He was known as Lightning. They nicknamed Lightning because when he did deliveries and things like that, ran errands and stuff for the hotel, he was always quick, very quick. And that name stuck because when I was growing up, we used to go into town and go shopping, and someone said, Harold, the other half said Lightning. And it was just, and he answered you, it's stuck. I knew my own father was Lightning. And I must also add, Dad only had a grade 2 education, and there's a reason for that, but we don't get into that. Anyway, he had a grade 2 education, and when he became a teenager, he lived in a hotel in London, and still exists. And there was a guy there that found out, that was working with them, found out he couldn't read. I mean, he could write his name, but that means he said, I'm going to give you a spelling and you teach yourself. That's why when you see where he's writing on his pen, he writes it like it sounds.
Right.
No, but if he says, go see the C, he won't say F-E-A, he go F-E-E. C. You understand?
Yeah.
But anyway, but he taught himself how to read it, and that's pretty hard to do. Some of the notes he used to read around the house, were quite read loud.
Actually, he had a the Reader's Digest.
Yeah, Reader's Digest, that, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he told you, yeah, Reader's Digest, yeah.
Read that.
Some of the notes that he would, like, he would, like, say, we'll list all the household goods here. But household was spelled household. Things like that, and so you just ignore it, say, you know. Yeah. We know what you meant.
There is one story about, you're talking overseas, like when you was there. In addition to what Dr. said about him falling out the truck, there was another time where a bunch of his friends were going to go out in town, wherever he was stationed, to a movie. And apparently there was an air raid that night, and whoever that was in that line was struck down. And he told me that when I was very, but I was old enough to understand, right? And he goes, that's how things happen in life. Had they had went, we probably would be sitting
If anybody wasn't introduced, that's one and only young one son.
there. So proud, because when I was very small, he was going, this is my only son. And, I felt great about that. And in addition to what Natasha said about lightning, I didn't know the name was Harold until I was probably 7 years old. Because it was lightning. And I'm so proud of it. And he told me the stories of how we became lightning. And I was, wow, okay. Very colorful man. Very colorful. Natasha and I, we were the youngest, and we had the most fun, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. He would lay on his back and balance Natasha.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right. Her first sip of beer. You know,
Oh, it's.
no, the memories like from Clara and on down, we all, you know, we can sit here for days.
How many children?
4 of us, there's 4 of us, yeah. They had 5, but they lost 1 in infancy. But in one of them,
Did you throw up on them?
if I did, no, I just laughed. We come out in the air with the palm of his hand. He was very, I mean, he grew up so, like, dirt. Their parents died incredibly young. I think his father was 42, I think his mother was in her late 30s maybe or something like that, really young. And, you know, I mean, he was a product of his time. He was like all the other men that grew up on like a Falls Road and went to war and didn't come back and talk about it and saw things. And, you know, that were today, they'd all be in therapy. You know, you know, so, and it comes out in different ways. So there was difficult times, and yeah, like just about, you know, any family at that time. But at the same time, other things that he just loved. When he loved something, he went like Christmas. That's what I was going to say. I don't remember a Christmas that wasn't great, and it was crazy. And you're trying to duplicate the same thing, right? You're trying to duplicate the same, but you don't get the exact, you know, same things. But it was almost like he was trying to make it something that he did not have, that he did not experience. But when it came to Christmas,
That's probably exactly what he was doing.
yeah, and he loved to, you know, like to go on picnics and stuff.
He used to take pictures of the woods and get Christmas
We
trees.
used to put her on a Christmas tree. You too, because,
I know from a Christmas tree.
He said he took you in the woods once for a treat or something, you were all very small. And he pretended, he said, well, yeah, but this is a story that he told me, he looked at you, he said.
I used to go in the woods, but it wasn't for Christmas.
Well, and he said, you know, they're looking at you, they got kids on cameras looking at you, and whatever, but they better not be laughing at me. And he always repeated that story all of the time, but yeah, we used to go back and Bruce and I, go back and cut down little 2 or 3 trees, pick the best one for the house.
You would walk around it, ain't it?
Yeah, that's all, it had to be perfect. Count the points in the top, like, it was perfect, it had to be just like it's art. So, but it had to be, like, certain things he was just absolutely crazy about, but, you know, we have to remember that he was a product of his time. And I don't even know how the thought of even going through and living through some of those things, I could not even begin to imagine. But anyway.
There are some friends and family back there that
Yes.
are hidden away.
But yeah, these are our cousins. This
Yeah.
is Sheldon, over here. Stand up and say hi. Brian, and we're in the back is Byron. Now they're our first cousins, but they're more like brothers. They were my mother's sisters, children. We really grew up, yeah. They have stories about him too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's hear them. I want to share them, yeah. But they experienced the health problems, this was just like we did, so. There you go.
I have a story. Oh, it's doing my arm. Yeah, Tony Moore and Hank and yeah. Yeah, it's me.
He's got stories to tell.
Oh, yeah. Well, my memory is fading on me, so I was trying to remember when this was happening. Harold and I became very good friends. I met him first when he was a legionnaire or commissionaire at the Tidal Power Project. I had moved in recently into Randall Ferry, and I used to drive by going to the grocery store, and I'd look up in the winter, because it'd be dark early, and I'd see this fella, and I'd think, geez, he looks like he's drawing, you know? And so one day I just drove up to the shack, and knocked on the door and went into the shack, and sure enough, Harold's working away with his pen, and we just hit it off anyways. And have been friends for years. And one day he phoned me up and he said, he always had an old van, second, third hand, fourth hand, with his little dog Sport, and we driving around together. It was really sweet to see. He didn't see it that way, but when I'd see him, it always, I thought it was so neat to see this old artist with the little dog sitting in the front seat and driving around, whatever. But anyways, he phoned me up and he said one day that he had to get, he wanted to get another second-hand van. His van was finished. And he drove up to the house, and it was in bad shape. It rattled all over the place. And the muffler was gone, it was rusty, the whole 9 yards, probably a cracked windshield for all of them. Anyways, we headed up towards Greenwood, and we looked around. I think he was looking for something that would be parked on the side, you know, for sale sign. And he couldn't find anything, so we were coming back, and we came through Kingston. And lo and behold, outside of Kingston, there was one of those safety check by the RCMP. And it was a huge big lineup. And I said, oh, God. They're going to impound the van and we're going to jail. And Harold had the radio on. He was slightly deaf, and he had the radio on full volume, and it was Western music, and it was blaring away, and we were slowly moving closer to this RCMP guy, big tall fella, sunglasses, the whole 9 yards, looking very impressive. And he was kind of cool, like if cars were all right, he'd go. If there was something wrong, go, and the other officers would write you off a ticket. So we were slowly progressing, and of course, I was sweating. It was summertime, and you know, I was nervous. I just I didn't want to have to spend the whole rigmarole in the mansion. Anyways, Harold, calm as a cucumber, and as I say, also no seatbelt, neither has And we finally arrived up, and the RCMP guy, a big, tall man, very intimidating, he looked at us and he went. I'd say, I wish I'd known who he was. I would have given him the best pay I could have given. I thought he was so smart. It's not about being, a policeman. It's about being a human being. I thought that was so sweet what he did. And Harold, by the way, he wasn't grateful. He just took this natural. So that's Harold. This is so glad to see you. I hope that myself. Harold was different ways. We didn't miss a lot of Lewis. So I hope that you guys are lunch tonight. You got the recognition that you're a very special human being. And you saw this is why.
Yes. Yeah, Ringo, I'll go you out. This is the first time I've met you.
One of the things that Natasha and I have talked about is the house is still in Weymouth. And I think she's semi-retired now. Right? Yeah. And I said the great retirement project would be is to try and get this house recognized and renovated because it's in pretty bad shape. And turn it into a cultural center related to Harold Cromwell because there's all these stories and all the artwork and everything. And I said, well, Ray can help. So, well, anyway, no pressure. But, you think of things that, there are a number of folk artists in Nova Scotia who have places where they live that have been restored and renovated and become cultural centers. And I think Sister Landing Cultural Center would be interested in something like that as well.
Yes, I've spoken to Totally, and she thinks that, I mean, it's been a conversation that's been had before, but, it just would be good. It would be something that if, the artwork could be, properly stored, in the right climatized, surroundings, so on and so forth. And it would be nice if there was some kind of place that was built in Weymouth. I mean, that's where it was from. And that's where it all was. So, but we'll see. I might not be semi-retired for much longer. I'm going to put another office in my house. So.
I think we can all certainly put our positive energy towards that. Because I think that'd be a great project.
Yeah, it would be.
But are there other stories? Anything anybody wants to share? Well, I would say then, I guess thank you very much. This was great. I hope maybe you learned something new about your father. I don't know.
I have.
Just the whole idea of his importance as a storyteller. I just think it's so significant. And again, getting back to those two women from the UK that they looked at and they said, each one of these is like a separate world.
Yes, that picture.
You look at them, you can spend so much time. And we did Randy and I, when we were installing the show, were thinking, well, should we edit this show a little bit? Because there's so much, but we said, no. Yeah, we want to get as much of it up as we can.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think everyone should be compelled to come back and spend more time looking at each one without all the crunch of a big opening reception, you know. Spend some time here. Yeah, spend some
I
time.
wanted him to come up and say something. He
Go,
told me
let's come on, Carl.
and I didn't know about it.
Oh, okay, come on, Carl.
Okay, so first of all, I feel very out of place because a lot of you here know my grandfather more than I ever did. So I only ever met him a couple times, but the one thing that I always knew about him as a kid was just that he was an artist, so I bragged a lot. Like I'd be like, you know, grade 2 drawing Pokemon or something, and people would be like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, well, my grandfather's a professional artist. That was definitely something that, like, I think with him being an artist, I kind of felt ever since I was a kid that I needed to be an artist, because that's just what I was. So, yeah. That's all.
Good.
Still up.
I guess like Karlon, I didn't know my grandfather as much, but I always had the passion and will to draw as a youngster. I'm more of quantities and science, so I got on the map. You think my mother gave me a set of encyclopedias, I learned old maps and had to challenge myself, and it wasn't just good enough to just draw a straight map. You have to start doing it backwards, you have to start integrating, it's gotta be complicated, right? But from a young age, it was just something I had to do, like Karlon says. It came natural.
And Phillip is his grandson because it's not been recognized, but I was Harold's daughter. I may have been in the skeleton in the closet, but I'm Harold's daughter as well. I'm his oldest daughter. He did not bring me up, but I had a lot of respect for him, and we had a lot of private talks. So I'm so proud that Phillip, as Phillip says, Phillip drew before he even hardly walked. He used to draw the Flintstones. He started with the Flintstones, and then he went on to different things. His maps that he's drawing just completely blows my mind. My head gets tight. But I'm so very, very proud that he has that part of Harold. And Karlon as well. Then I've given birth to a couple skeletons.
Well,
it's okay.
Ray, is there anything else that you'd like to say? Or?
Oh boy, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed this. It's not the kind of thing that you see often in an art gallery. It's something that is very unique, I think, to this place. What a wonderful community spirit is happening here. I do think that there's no doubt in my mind that Harold Cromwell, his work is going to be better enough. This is the work speaks for itself. It is very, very strong. And Natasha, we will talk. I have some ideas. Good.
Good stuff. Looking forward to it.
All right, well, thank you all for participating today, and we look forward, as I said, to seeing the catalog around this coming week. So if you're interested in having, that kind of memento of this event here, please stop by and also spend time looking at the exhibition. So we're open, like we're called Wednesday through Saturday. And so from what time, Julie? I'm forgetting right now.
For every day?
Yeah.
Same as usual, 10 to 4.
10 to 4. 10 to 4 Wednesday through Saturday. So, yeah.
And we'll be.
Saturdays is 11 to 2.
Sometimes
we don't
We'll be making it available on the Moose's website as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Yes, you can order the catalog right straight from Moose House
Or,
Publishing.
or,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.